Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
Dr. Tonya and Matthews. Welcome.
Hello.
The CEO of the International African American Museum opening up in Charleston, South Carolina.
Woo, still sounds good every time somebody
I know,
says
right?
it, right?
How are you
Yes.
this morning?
I am well. I am well.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, tell us the importance of the International African American Museum opening up in Charleston.
Well, tell us what it is for people that don't know. What are people going to get to see?
Yes, absolutely. So we are building the International African American Museum in Charleston. It is an encyclopedic museum. That means we cover a lot of years, a lot of topics. We are being built on the site of one of our nation's most prolific slave trading ports. That is at Gadsden's Wharf. The nice thing about being encyclopedic is that we can emphasize that slavery is a part of the African American journey, but it is in the middle. It is not the beginning. It is not the end. So we take it all the way back to where we come from. We take it all the way forward to just about what we're doing now. We've got galleries, reflection pool, art installations, programming, good conversation. So that is who we are. And you know, it's interesting. All roads lead back to Charleston.
That's right.
You want to talk about theater, you better come to New York. You want to talk about movies, you better go to Hollywood. You want to talk about why America is what it is today and what we are up to, all these conversations we are having about race and racism and equity and equality and the stories. Well, Charleston has a lot of those answers. So when we talk about history that we should know and stories that we should be telling, a lot of those roads lead to the South, and a lot definitely lead right through Charleston and the Low Country.
It's sad because what you said earlier is, you know, as a kid, all we had was encyclopedias, right? And it was, and my mom still got her encyclopedias too, right? Because she took a long time to pay it off. But you only got a story about this much, so we didn't know.
It was like
the
three
history.
people,
It was
right?
three people.
It was three people. Y'all know the three people, right?
Martin Luther King Jr.
Malcolm X.
No, not even Malcolm, really.
You got a little sentence on Detroit Red.
Rosa Parks.
We got Rosa Parks.
Yeah, Rosa Parks.
Who was the other one?
They might just throw it. You might get Lil Frederick Douglass. You might get Lil
Frederick
Frederick
Robinson.
Douglass.
We got little Jackie Robinson.
You did get some Jackie. We did get some Jackie.
Well, since we're talking about education, I know for you, Dr. Matthews, education was extremely important for you growing up. So what do you think about these debates now about what's being taught in schools, and what do you think should be reflected in those curriculums?
That is a really good question. I am scripted by my mother, who is a lifetime and retired educator, and she reminds me that folks probably need to let teachers do what teachers do. It's a profession and it's a calling, and I'm listening to teachers who are saying, listen, we want to teach the stories. We just need some tools to teach the stories, and y'all need to trust the genius of fifth graders just a little bit more. I mean, you know, we can tell them or they can go out and find on their own. And you know what, honestly, you know, we as grown-ups, if I may say, need to be, you know, with our children when they are learning these stories. And yes, they're going to ask us some tough questions, but the babies are insightful. And so I do think that I am not a big fan of my nation's children not being the smartest in every room that they run into. And so I don't want folks knowing stuff about our history that we don't know ourselves. And so I'm a big proponent of let's figure out how to tell everything in its right place in its right time, because we really do all need to know this.
Could we go back and talk about Gadsden's Wharf and give people some education? Like, why is that such a good location for the International African American Museum?
So, you know, according to some historians, we're talking somewhere between 45 and 55% of all Africans that came through the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, would have come through Gadsden's Wharf. So that means you're at upwards of 50, nearly maybe 60% of all African Americans who are going to trace themselves through the trade will find that their people stepped in that land, right? I mean, it was huge. They say it could hold up to 16 ships at a time. Think cruise ship, not rowboat, cruise ship. And so when you talk about that, it reminds you this is an industry, right? It was an industry. Listen, folks, we weren't bringing in people. We were importing cargo and commodity. We were making money hand over foot. Charleston at one point was the richest city in the colonies. And it wasn't just due to the labor of the Africans and African Americans. it was also due to the genius and the ingenuity, right? I don't know if any of y'all know about South Carolina and our rice. Woo! Mm-hmm. Don't go down there. You don't know how to cook rice. Don't pretend you can cook rice. Listen, just don't do it. But that came when we began importing Africans who were from communities that already knew how to rice. We were just dabbling, but they knew the technology, they knew the rice ways. Next thing you know, we number one in the world.
They were very specific about the slaves that they went to. They
were very specific, and you can see it in the pricing. Mm-hmm. The more skills you had for the industry at hand, being ricing, the higher your price was in that space. And so, as tough as that is to talk about, it is important to understand like the architecture, the deliberateness, the what was happening in that space, so that we understand how amazing, say, the story of a Dr. King, a Rosa Parks, a Septima Clark, a Reverend Esau Jenkins actually is. Mm-hmm. It's not just about where they were and what they were doing. That was amazing. But where they came from, where their people came out of, mm-hmm. That's like tuning into your hero movie at the end. It's okay. He blew up some bad guys, but you don't have the full story. Or you don't really get the cheering you should at the end. Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, it cost millions and millions and millions to build this.
Yes, it did.
How difficult was it to get some sponsors and the people to come aboard to help pay for this?
It took 22 years to do this, and now that we're opening in January 2023, technically 23 years. And it's a lot of folks. The origination of the museum came from a former mayor, state of the city address in 2000, right? This was Mayor Joseph Riley.
What's up, Mayor Riley?
22 years. First there's the convincing, right? Convincing people that we could actually do this. I have run into people today that said, I never thought y'all were going to be able to pull that off. Mm. I never thought y'all were going to be able to do that kind of thing in that kind of place for that kind of money. Mm. But I think once we had some folks come on in the beginning, you know how you look over there, you don't want to be first, but you don't want to be last either. And then I will say, there are pros and cons to what we've been through over the last few years, 2019, 2020, 21. And so folks have been thinking. Folks have been looking for ways to think about how they can invest. This goes from big companies, that need to make a statement to their customers. But we also have more than 22,000 charter members all over the country right now. And I think that was folks still wanting to raise their hand. Want to raise their hand, say something, do a little something, make a statement. So I am really grateful because you're right. It costs a lot to build and it costs a lot to run once we're open too.
I see white folks try to take our history out of textbooks in school. So what backlash did you get on that side?
So, it's very, very interesting. I've been cautious and I've been waiting and I've been watching. And maybe just because I got a praying grandmother, at the moment, I am surrounded by what I would call enthusiastic folks. Now, we may run into a careful what you wish for, right? I practice a radical empathy without sympathy, which means I know it's going to hurt, but we're going to do it anyways. It'll be all right. Like, trust us. We can get through this. And so I think in many ways, folks know something needs to happen, right? They know they need to hear the story. And real talk, museums are not scary spaces. That's right. Not the way we build. And so maybe folks are also thinking, all right, perhaps, I just go to a little museum, do my thing and sort of see what I see. So maybe it's also a little bit of that too.
But when many states getting rid of CRT, I feel like, projects like the museum are more important than ever.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Things are definitely more important than ever. And they call me Dr. Matthews for a reason, and I have to sort of laugh and chuckle because folks are talking about critical race theory, but they're not talking about critical race theory. And interestingly enough, this is a history museum. Some folks who really sort of get in the weeds know that CRT was actually a legal academic theory. I'm like, well, I'm not suing anybody, so I'm going to be okay.
Really?
Yes.
Break that down. I didn't know that.
It's a theory about sort of what's behind sort of intentions and systems and how things work. Mm-hmm. Just the authentic teaching of history in and of itself is not a theory. Like, these are facts.
It's a fact.
These are facts. And so I think that, if we create a space, I call it courageous curiosity. I don't do safe spaces. There's no such thing, right? Courageous curiosity. Mm-hmm. If I give you a space where you're not going to be judged for what you don't know, and you're not going to be judged for your reaction about this new information, right? And you can look at the water, reflect, do what you need to do. I'm hoping that it will be all right, because that's only step one. After you learn that, then we actually have to get in a conversation. So,
right.
So if you're trying to wait to get frazzled over something, just wait for the conversation. Like just learning the stories, and they are such good stories. Because there are stories of, triumph and resilience and creativity and tenacity. I mean, there's not a lot more American than African Americans in some of our stories, right? The ways we think about, what it takes and what we represent to ourselves. So here it go. I'll know for sure, when we open the doors. But so far, I think prayers up. Good vibes only, and we're going to make it happen.
Dr. Matthews, you said this has been a journey for 23 years, right, to get these doors open finally in January. So what made you come on board as the CEO?
So, I got what I call the call, right? I was up in Detroit. Peace out to all my folks up in Detroit. Honestly, living my second best life. You're going to live your second best life in COVID. So living my second best life. And I got the call that the International African American Museum, the search firm, was interested in talking to me about this. I mean, just the name alone, right? It's like, really? What? Me? Oh, okay. And so, even though I have been in museums, for more than a decade, and this is what I do, it just seemed so big, so important, so powerful that I was incredibly sort of humbled and then kind of called to be in the space. And at the end of the day, my mama is so proud. Okay, my mama is proud. And so it's a very, very big deal. And I was trying to think about how I could be in this space and how I'm ready for this space. And so that was the big thing. But then I will tell you, I did my little secret shopper moment. Like, this is pro tip for anybody out there thinking about taking a job or a role or something. You need to do your own secret shopper without handlers. So I literally snuck into Charleston, right? Reverse Underground Railroad. I snuck into Charleston, checked it out on my own, no search committee, no handlers, no none of that, to see what it felt like to me. And it felt like a powerful place where powerful things could happen.
What do you think non-Black people will learn from touring the museum?
I think that non-Black people are going to learn that things have not been taught, and it's going to be on such a scale that makes you wonder if it was deliberate. Right. I think that, being Black, being African American, I'm kind of sitting in a space where, some of this has been deliberate. Right. But I've been sitting in that space for a very, very long time. So it's not shocking to me. So I think that's part of it. I think the other thing that non-Black folks are going to encounter is what they always encounter when they step into Black community, is that there's a whole lot of love over here. Lord, that's Black folks, the most forgiving folks on the planet. And we always do this thing of embracing, right? And so I think they're also going to find that space when they're trying to figure out, all right, is this a place where I say I'm sorry? And the brothers and sisters are like, listen, you all right? Just going into the next exhibit. We got this, And so I think they will. I think they will discover those things. And then last but not least, I think a lot of folks will get the, is that what happened? Is that what's going on? And I actually think Black folks are going to get that too, right? I mean, when we say we're not teaching the stories, we mean we're not teaching it to everyone. And there's a reason, right? I mean, in order to keep a people enslaved, they must not understand the concept of freedom. So you've got to keep that out of the story, right? You've got to keep the stories of all the victory, all the triumph, all the making a way out of no way sort of out of the hands of folks you don't want to make a way out of no way. And so, I run into probably more Black folks who are excited that there's a place to bring their children because they know they're not getting it, and they also know that they didn't quite have it. And so I think, folks are largely going to take the same things, but their reaction to those things are probably going to be a little different.
I was going to ask, with a lot of museums closing in the last couple of years because people aren't going out. How do we make sure that with this museum, it's kind of in the curriculum, right? Because, I'm from New York, and every year we went to go see the White House or the Pentagon or the Statue of Liberty, or there's certain things that we went to go see. It was in the curriculum, hands down, but I also know that kept those monuments open.
Right.
How do we make sure that's in our kids' schools curriculum to keep that, to make sure that we have money coming in, because we have to make sure that place can be ran?
Yep. From your mouth to any superintendent within the sound of your voice's ears. So I think that's one, right? I do think that we are that kind of site, right?
I agree.
We're over about 120,000 square feet. Just come on. So I think we are that kind of site. The bus, the field trip, the overnight trip, we are definitely that kind of site. Charleston is definitely that kind of place. The second thing is, I think when we think about educators and our classrooms, most of our teachers don't write their textbooks. They don't write, a lot of what they're delivering. Their genius is in activating it, so that the babies get excited. And so I want the museum to play a role in that, right? How do we support our teachers in the classroom? How do we support our teachers also outside the classroom? Most teachers are lifelong learners, right? So we're thinking about Teachers Night at the museum, where you can come and enjoy the museum without having to simultaneously be mama, auntie, daddy, uncle, chaperone, sort of those kinds of things. And I also think that even outside of the classroom, let's not get it twisted, the baby's first teacher, our own first teacher, starts at home. It always, always, always starts at home. And so one of the things I want for folks to take their favorite story out of the museum. I want that classic rolling your eyes moment at Thanksgiving because Uncle so-and-so about to tell the same story that he learned at this museum 10 years ago. So this is also part of it, right? So there's I need the field trips. We want to support teachers actually in the classroom, but we also want to give folks enough so that, we are dominating, Thanksgiving and January and yes, of course, February, and then all the months out of the year, so that we are, taking ownership for educating inside our own spaces.
I think what you should do is, like, how the Met Gala has their galas at that museum. I think we should do like our own gala there, where people wear African garb and they dress up.
You think that's not happening?
Okay, I'm asking. I'm just asking.
You think that's not happening?
I'm just asking.
Listen, it is definitely happening. It's going to be part of one of our kind of big opening moments. I don't know, trying to get sort of the black royalty to come out and visit us down there. And I also think thinking of other, nights like that. I mean, if anyone goes to the website and they look at our building, they'll see we're raised. So we have these, what I call a front yard and a backyard. It's technically East Yard, West Yard, but listen, I grew up where I grew up. It's front yard, backyard, where we can have events, right? And we can have things out there. We can have like music and musicians and sort of all that kind of stuff. And so I do like the whole, superiorly dressed to the nines, with your little knives, the giant earrings.
Money go for fundraising and all that. I love that.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I read an article where you said that racism and algebra are the two scariest words in the English language. Can you talk about that? Because I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. So my background is actually in engineering, biomedical engineering. Peace out to the sister astronaut that's up there on the International Space Station right now. I'm just so fangirling. The question I get is, how did you translate into history? And so I would jokingly say, the two scariest words in the English language are racism and algebra. real talk, right? When anybody out there who has kids or who remembers, fifth, sixth grade, algebra is like the scariest thing ever. And people carry that with them for their entire life. So I was running a science museum. People would still walk in with that. Well, math is not really my thing, and I wasn't really taught this, and I don't know. And it's also, math is for those kind of people, right? It's always, for someone else. It's the exact same thing when we're talking about racism, and this. Well, I didn't learn that. I didn't know about it. Ooh, that's a conversation for those people. Like, I'm not really involved in that. And folks are very, very scared. And sometimes they react in a rather hostile way. Parent-teacher conferences over algebra can be as scary as parent-teacher conferences in Black History Month. And so some of the skills that I learned in terms of putting people at ease and giving them the confidence to sort of just step in that space. I'm not sending you in there alone. And so it became really funny to me when I realized I'm using the same exact skill set to get folks through this conversation than I was through some of those other conversations.
Wow. One of the stories I'm happy that's going to get to be told is the story of Denmark VC. And I know we're doing the bicentennial weekend, July 14th through the 16th.
I think, the story of Denmark VC, for folks that are unfamiliar, is probably one of the classics, right? One of my favorite African proverbs is hunters will be heroes until lions become historians. Right? There are many, many ways of saying that. To the victors go the spoils, et cetera, et cetera. So Denmark Vesey was an enslaved African who ultimately bought his freedom, was not allowed to buy the freedom of his wife and child. Right? So he's in Charleston. He's one of the founding deacons of what is now Mother Emanuel. So founding deacon is my language. It was different language at that time. Founding deacon of the church, small business owner, right? Freed himself. Founding deacon of a church, small business owner, right? Boom. Supposed to be the American dream, but still living in this construct, right? Where people around him were enslaved, where his family was still enslaved. Ultimately, he was inspired by the revolutions that were happening on the islands, and was trying to essentially do that same thing, right? Arm Black folks in Charleston, in that community, and take back their freedom, get on a boat, go back to an island that had already freed itself. And this, make no mistake, this was going to be brutal. It was going to be a revolution. It was going to be a fight for freedom. He was sold out. Someone told, and then summarily... Another
enslaved person told.
Yeah.
Or somebody who was enslaved told.
Yeah. Someone who was supposed to be part of the planning. They had a trial, to what extent trials can happen back in the day for those kinds of not yet citizens, and the majority of them, not the majority, a significant number of them, including Denmark Vesey, were hung. Okay. So the way the story was told, though, was that he was, an insurgent, that he was a violent, rampaging, freed African. This is why we shouldn't be freeing them in the first place. This is some of the origin stories of arming the people of Charleston and sort of those kinds of things. And so it was told in that light, basically rogue African out to kill all of the white people in the community. This was very scary because, remember, at a time, Black folks outnumbered white folks in South Carolina because of slavery. So when we tell the story today, though, Denmark Vesey is finally being referenced as a revolutionary and an abolitionist, right? Which at the end of the day, this is what was happening. I'm thinking about means aside. And so this is, I think, part of one of the powerful things about the museum, right, is reclaiming stories or lifting up stories that have been reclaimed and are being told. So this summer is the 200th anniversary of the attempted uprising. And I think it's important to also put it in contemporary context. I think one of the most interesting things is technically he almost had it all, right? He's free. He's got his own business. He's got a church. He's building his church. Why be unhappy? So think about the conversations we're having today. African Americans, you're better off than where you were. You have the vote. You got the big jobs now. You even had a president. What more do you want? Why are y'all still out there raging against the machine? And it just goes to show that that's the way the spirit of freedom works, right?
Yeah, nobody's free till everybody's free.
99 and a half won't do. It just does not work. And so, I think as we start to talk, and I know there are lots of celebrations going on in different places, as we start to talk, it's about bringing that history to why it matters today. And I think there's something to be said about understanding his story that way.
So it's July 14th through the 16th, right?
Yes, July 14th through 16th down in Charleston, featuring your intrepid host there, Brother Charlamagne the God. We've got some other folks coming in, Kamal Bell. And as I was explaining, get in where you fit in. We have a nice panel. You want to get nerdy with it. We're going to have some conversation, get a couple of historians and pundits to talk. You may need to, reflect. We got a little music going, and we're going to close out. Anthony Hamilton, trying to close out with a little comedy, because sometimes you just need to let the stress out. You just need to laugh.
Yeah, D.L. Hughley.
D.L. Hughley, right? And so we have that big lineup, because I think for me, one of the reasons I love museums is because we got a whole lot of doorways, right? However you need to get in the building, you just get in the building. It's not one way in, not one way out. And so I'm hoping that conversation in July will help us do that.
And one thing that you say when we was touring the facility, you said this isn't a story of enslaved Africans. This is a story of survival.
Yes. It is a story of survival. It's a story of victory. And honestly, it's a story of love, right? I mean, you got to love yourself and your babies and your children. I think it's really weird for me to be in that space. And different people have different reactions. But when I'm in that space, I am hella joyful. It is so interesting. And I had to figure out why. I'm like, girl, you are walking on the site of this tragedy of tens of thousands of your people being enslaved. And then a little voice said, but yeah, look at you now, right? Right. I mean, look at what happened, right? Which is to understand that, folks were in a space where for no reason whatsoever, some part of them believed that I could exist. And that we could come back into that space. And so, 9 times out of 10, I'm up there trying not to smile through the hard parts of the story, because I know actually how the story not ends, but I know what this chapter is unfolding.
So when's the grand opening?
The grand opening is the weekend of January 20th in 2023. So that is at the tail end of Martin Luther King weekend. We are going to kick it off for that whole weekend, have lots of events. The gala that folks are asking for, a nice little opening ceremony that even happens the day before, but, outdoor music and festivals and storytelling. And we're going to try to run that the whole week. Because I'm expecting there's so many of y'all gonna come, they're not all gonna fit.
That's right.
So I'm expecting to have to spread folks out for the opening. So I'm very, very excited about that.
And how can people donate if they want to donate?
Oh, bless you. Boy, you about to get yourself a second job. So if you go to our website, iaamuseum.org, you can easily straight donate. Even if you're a company, by the way, I got the small business owners out there, rep your business. You can donate as a company. And you can also become a charter member. So there is still time to become a charter member. Now, once a charter member, always a charter member. Yes, I will keep asking you for your annual donation every year. You want the doors to stay open. But that charter membership is a special designation to those who believed in us before we opened the doors.
All right. Well, we appreciate you for joining us today. I know you got a hard out, but
That's
thank
right.
you so much.
And go check out the museum, iaamuseum.org.
All right. It's Dr. Tonya.
Tonya.
And Matthews. It's the Breakfast
Thank you for
Club.
coming.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.